Pamela Anderson, sex symbol of her time, has had it all, but fame comes at a price. She was tragically sexualized as a child, teenager, and adult woman. Will she still find love amidst her pain and trauma? This eye-opening story is nothing you've imagined. Dysfunctional family. Pamela Anderson was born in Ladysmith, British Columbia, Canada, to a working-class family of a furnace repairman named Barry Anderson and a waitress named Carol. She was called a centennial baby because she was born on July 1st, 1967, which was the 100th anniversary of the Constitution Act of 1867. Looking from the outside, it seemed like Pamela grew up in a normal home with loving parents. In her recent Netflix documentary, she described her home as being triggering and crazy. Her parents had a rocky relationship from the start. When they got married, they had Pamela. They were both still in their teens. They were only 17 and 19 at the time. Pamela says they left her father a few times where they lived in a car and were on welfare. However, they would later return. Pamela also remembered how her parents always fought and called each other names, which caused a lot of negative memories, like when Carol was pregnant with Pam and Barry drove so fast that he crashed the car. Carol's head went right through the windshield, leaving a scar on her forehead that she still has today. Sexual abuse. Her parents made a lot of mistakes for letting Pamela witness their unstable relationship, but this isn't their biggest mistake. Trusting a babysitter was. Her parents thought they had hired a great babysitter because she always brought gifts, but she started abusing Pamela when she was only 6 years old and continued to do so for 3 or 4 years. Even though she was a child at the time, she tried to kill the babysitter by attempting to stab her in the heart with a candy cane pen. She started telling her babysitter she wanted her to die, and the next day, the babysitter died in a car accident. She thought she killed the babysitter with her magical mind, but she couldn't tell anyone. Unfortunately, this was not the last time. When she was 12, she went to a friend's boyfriend's house. Even though they both looked young, the older man, her friend knew, picked them both up and took them to his house. When they got there, he left her alone with his older brother, who was 25 years old. He offered to teach her how to play backgammon, and after some time, he rubbed her back, which led him to raping her later. She still had to recall how effortlessly she was undressed by him, despite his best efforts to resist. She was so desperate to escape that she screamed and called for her friend. Afterwards, she locked herself in the bathroom and realized she was no longer a virgin. This was her first heterosexual experience, and this one will leave scars for life. Having gone through what she had, she was embarrassed by her past, not knowing it would happen again a few years later. In 9th grade, her boyfriend and his 6 friends thought it would be funny to gang rape her. Her boyfriend not only raped her, but physically abused her as well. Once, he kicked her out of a moving car. He pushed her so hard with his foot that she had no choice but to open the door while the car was moving. She fell and rolled straight into a ditch. After that, it was hard for her to trust people. Teenage years. Even though she had a tough childhood, she didn't become rebellious as a child and did well as a teen. Pamela went to Highland Secondary School where she did acrobatics and gymnastics and was an athlete all through school. She was even a member of the volleyball squad. Because she grew up naturally sporty, this earned her the nickname Rubber Band at school. With this, she worked as a fitness instructor after high school. And like her mom, she also worked as a waitress from 16 to 19. A star is born. Moving forward in her life, fate has once again blessed her with the opportunity to become popular. At 22, Pamela was just simply watching the British Columbia Lions football game when her picture was shown on a stadium screen. She was brought down to the football field as the fans cheered for her. She easily became popular, and she immediately signed a contract to be the Blue Zone girl for Labatt's beer. After that, she received more advertising jobs. Playboy. With her becoming the Blue Zone girl who always appeared in Monday Night Football ads, Playboy founder Hugh Hefner discovered her. Pamela was immediately invited to audition for Playboy and appeared as the cover girl for the magazine's October 1989 issue, wearing nothing but a schoolgirl uniform. With her natural and striking beauty, she easily became Playboy of the Month. Between 1989 and 2016, she was on the cover of Playboy magazine 14 times. She went on to pose for the magazine for 22 years, which is more than any other model in publication's history. Her exposure in these magazines landed her the role of C.J. Parker on the television television series Baywatch in its first episode of the third season when she was just 25 years old. She starred as CJ for 5 years before leaving in 1997 to pursue other acting and modeling jobs. A whirlwind romance. With a successful modeling career, she was ready to take on relationships, but surely not this fast. Pamela married her first husband, Tommy Lee, when she had only known him for 4 days before marrying. She described it as love at first sight. They met on New Year's Eve, where he saw her as a beautiful blonde bombshell in all white. He liked her the second he saw her, so he asked for her phone number and kissed her goodnight before leaving the party. They saw each other again in Mexico, and things quickly escalated between the two during this trip. On her third date together, he popped the question, and she happily agreed to marry him. Less than 24 hours later, they were married on a beach in Cancun. After their wedding, they moved into his Malibu beach house and spent their honeymoon on a 5-day houseboat trip on Lake Mead. During this trip, they filmed intimate moments that were later turned into a sex tape by a third party. A few months later, they were robbed by their electrician, Rand Gauthier, as he had been fired from a project and wanted to get revenge. He stole a safe because he thought it would have guns and Pamela's jewelry in it. To his surprise, the safe also included footage from the couple's honeymoon in Lake Mead. Surprisingly, he was never charged with a crime in connection with the tape. Private photos of Pamela and details of the sex tape were later published in Penthouse's June issue. In fact, they lost the case when they sued the magazine. After having 2 kids, another case faced Pamela as she charged Tommy with felony spousal abuse and child abuse. She filed for divorce a few hours later, saying that they couldn't get along and that she wanted to go back to her maiden name and have full custody of their 2 kids, Brandon and Dylan. In fact, Pamela could have had 3 children, but she had a miscarriage with their first child. So determined were the paparazzi to get photos, they kept blocking the ambulance as it went to the hospital. With this, Tommy was sentenced to jail for 6 months over charges of spousal abuse. But once his time was up, they were seen together again. They were back to attending award shows together and holding hands in restaurants, but they were also dissing each other at interviews and calling their relationship off for years on end. Pamela's love stories. Despite her messy track record with Tommy, Pamela never gave up on love. Pamela has been married 4 times to 4 more husbands: Kid Rock, Rick Salomon, John Peters, and Dan Hayhurst. Kid Rock, a singer, was her second husband. They started dating in the spring of 2001 after she broke up with model Marcus Schenkenberg, with whom she'd been dating for a year. After 4 months of marriage, Pamela filed for divorce for irreconcilable differences. In this relationship, she also had a miscarriage. Rick Solomon, a poker player, was her third husband. They'd been friends for 15 years. They got divorced 2 months after they got married, and they got married again in January 2014. She filed for divorce again after a few months. Then she asked for her divorce petition to be thrown out before she and Rick's divorce was finalized in April 2015 after a year of marriage. As messy and confusing as it sounds, things got a lot worse when Pamela showed receipts of several harassing emails and text messages from Rick, one of which called her a serial baby killer with her husbands. John Peters, a producer, was Pamela Anderson's 4th husband. They met before at the Playboy Mansion in the mid-1980s. After meeting Pamela, John said he had wanted her for 35 years. In January 2020, they were finally married. After 12 days, Pamela told everybody that she and John had broken up. Reports say that they were never even legally married because they didn't file for a marriage certificate after their wedding. Dan Hayhurst, who worked as Pamela's bodyguard, was her 5th husband. In September 2020, 7 months after she broke up with John, they began dating. They got married at her home on Vancouver Island, Canada on Christmas Eve, December 24th, 2020. A year later, she fell out of love, and Dan was not the guy she previously thought he was. Down to earth. After years of media frenzy and multiple failed marriages, she's finally decided to return to her roots and come back home to Canada. She spends a lot of time writing open letters to world leaders about things she cares about, like animal rights and communities for Indigenous people. These letters are posted on the website of the Pamela Anderson Foundation. The nonprofit was started in 2014 and supports organizations and individuals who stand on the front lines to protect the rights of people, animals, and the environment. She even applies it to fashion, as she's worked with with Ashoka Paris to make a line of vegan purses and bags made from apple skins. Pamela Anderson is definitely a woman who has much more to offer than just her looks. Many people have taken advantage of her naivety and made money at her expense, but beyond all the difficult challenges she went through in life, she finally found the peace she deserves.